Glad so many of you find the way down in the basement. It's like a typical developer environment. We're down in the basement again. But yeah, thanks for being here. I want to talk a little bit about my most favorite sentence I tell people or my customers. Weeks of coding can save you hours of planning. Yeah, and exactly meant that way. Very short introduction. My name is Frank. I have a Twitter account. If you want to leave any feedback and are too scared or don't want to talk to me, good, bad, whatever, so I can get better and know how you felt about it. Or come back later to me and tell me what you think. If you find it boring or if you enjoyed it, I like to have feedback so I can get better. Also, I'm a freelance consultant, developer, coach, whatever you want to call it. And my main focus is like Agile development, Agile software development, and code quality. That's why I have a nice URL like codequality.de. But that's mostly for me. There's another thing. I'm from Hamburg. That's why there's also this moin, because in Hamburg we say moin, and it doesn't mean good morning. It just means hello. So you can say moin even during the night. It's always okay. If you're saying moin moin, you're talking too much. I'm also running the PHP User Group in Hamburg since 2012, so if you ever are in Hamburg, feel free to come by. And we also love to have you giving a lightning talk or a real talk, whatever. It's very friendly, very nice, and it will be next week on Tuesday. So if you're around, feel free to come by. That's it. So to have a quick introduction, I want to tell you a small story about application development. Let's say there was once upon a time there was an idea to create a new application, a really fancy new idea. Everyone was very excited about that. We wanted to have a cool name, so let's say customized application repository, or very short for CAR. So when we started developing, everything was really fun, it was fast. We were really glad that we could work on that, and it was really going well. And the world was really nice, everything was shiny, and it was solid, so we were really proud of what we were building. And at one point, we showed it to our customers. Because they said, yeah, that sounds great what you're doing, but we want to see it, and are you doing what we want to have there? And they notice, wait, that's missing a feature we really need, because yeah, with all this climate change and it's getting warmer and warmer, we need to have a automated climate air conditioning. But wait, we didn't think about that. Why didn't you tell us before? But yeah, it was obvious for the customer, not for us. So we have a problem. Our architecture doesn't really cater the needs, isn't really prepared to have this feature. What happened? We don't know. Did we miss it? Did he just not clarify this? And what do we do now? Can we refactor, rebuild the whole application just to get this feature in because, yeah, it does not fit into the architecture? Do we have time for that? But probably not. The customer really needs it fast. And he was expecting it. Okay, so we have no time. We just put it somewhere where it somehow fits. It's working now, so it's okay, right? And, well, this happens multiple times. So after a while, we have something that does fulfill all the features the customer wanted over time, but we are not satisfied with our application anymore. We want to rebuild it, we want to refactor it, and we want to throw it away and just get rid of it and start new because we don't know what happened there. What does it sound familiar? Had anybody of you experienced a project like this? Yeah, okay. Okay, that's sad. So, do you know this? Like, if you would have told me that 2 months ago, I would have done better. Or with all the information we have now, if we start again, we can build something better. Yeah, no, probably not. But so how does it happen? How does it happen that if we didn't get the information got lost somehow? And why does stuff like this happen? That's basically what I want to talk about. Like, how this missing informations, how can we get this, why is it happening, and how does it influence our software. Why does it happen all the time? Chinese whispers. In German, stille Post. Like, the customer told our project manager what you all probably seen this picture with the trees, like what the customer told that he wants to do, what the project lead understood that he wants to do, what the software architect wanted to build, what the developers was building, and so on, and what the customer really needed. So it's like playing Chinese whispers, and if it would be a smaller crowd, an unconference, I would probably just let it play now. I would give someone a detailed explanation what I want to have, and let's see what the rest back in the audience will understand out of that. Would probably be very fun. But basically, most of the times on project we're playing like this. How often as a developer do you have real interaction with the customer and he's telling you and explaining you in a face-to-face conversation what he really needs? You get a ticket, there's a user story maybe, and it's in there and you have to figure out what's really going on. On Monday there was a workshop from Arne Blankert, and he mentioned this sentence: software is a means to automate a solution to a problem. The workshop was event storming, I will get back later to that, but the sentence really struck me because it really fits into that. There are certain parts, if we take the sentence from the back, we need to have a problem, and we need to understand the problem. What does he really need? Not what he wants, because as you know, sometimes they want something, but later on they figure out that what was not what they really needed. So what is the real problem they want to solve? Then we can think about the solution. The solution might or might not be software. Sometimes you might have, if you think about a solution, and if you know what he's going to do, you can tell him, wait, that what you're telling me you want is not really solving your problem. It might even be better if you don't do the software. But if you think about a solution, you find different ways to find the right way to solve the problem, and we have a solution for that, then we can see how can we automate that, what software can we build for that. This is the part where developers come in. We also come in here because we need to have a solution first, a technical solution, but also an idea how to solve the problem. But this is basically what we are used to do, writing software. But it's the last step in a line of things. So, why is this so hard? It sounds quite easy, right? It's just having the problem, getting a solution, and then writing the code. It sounds a little bit like waterfall, but okay, no, we're not going that route. As a developer, we very often focus on the wrong details. We are thinking about implementation details. What information, what technical details do I need to make the software run? Because there's a ticket and there is already a user story that tells me what I need to do. I probably don't know why and what's going to happen with that, but I just need to know these information to get it done. So we're focusing on the implementation details, more or less. Instead of understanding why is this needed, what is going to be expected from that, and what does the customer want to achieve with that. Very often we don't really understand the problem, not only because we want to, or because we don't really know that we don't want to, or that we need to, but maybe the customer didn't really give us information as well. Also, yeah, we don't have time. All these meetings, and now we need more discussions, and yeah, there are a lot of companies with a bad meeting culture where every meeting feels like a waste of time. Who of you has been in meetings that felt like a waste of time? So now I'm going to tell you you need to discuss more. I wouldn't call it meeting, but you need to do more discussions with the customer, with your colleagues, with your stakeholder, with your project manager or a product owner. But we want to be productive, right? We want to be coding. Most developers feel really productive if they're coding. And that's dangerous. Because if we don't know what we're doing and we don't know what we want to achieve, it's kind of a problem. I've been at a customer, we were doing a refactoring, and after 2 days, a developer came up to me, can we finally start coding? And I was sitting there, sorry, I don't understand the problem yet. I don't know what you want to do. But he was used to, we don't have time, we have a deadline, we need to do this, and we need to get this done. So we don't have time. We need to start somehow, somewhere. And sorry, I don't know where to start because I don't understand the problem. I can write something down, but I don't know. Probably after 2 weeks or 2 months, someone will tell me that was wrong because, yeah, now I got the information. So, who of you is working Agile? Who of you is not working Agile? Maybe more interesting. Why not?
I don't like it.
Okay. Okay, interesting. You didn't like it. Okay, but Agile. Who of you knows the Agile Manifesto? Oh, only a cover. The Agile Manifesto was written in 2001 by Ken Beck, was signed by Ken Beck, Martin Fowler, Alistair Cockburn, a lot of really famous people, and they just sat together. I mean, Agile is older than that. Extreme programming was in the 90s, and all the ideas are dating back to 60s, 70s. They're really old. And they sit together and said, okay, we have some key values we see in developing Agile, and these are the 4 key values. Very important part. A lot of people know these Agile Manifesto, and they know these 4 key values, but they concentrate only on the things on the left. Because they say, these are important. Like, for example, working software over comprehensive documentation. So we're doing Agile, we don't need to document anymore. Wait, no, that's not what's standing there. And basically, there's a sentence below that that says, we value the things on the left. While there's value on the things on the right, we value the things on the left more. That means the left is more important to get things done, but it doesn't mean that the stuff on the right is not necessary anymore. But a lot of times, people only read this once, and they only remember the things on the left side and said, okay, we don't need to do all this thing anymore. We don't need to do any planning. We don't need any following a plan anymore. That sounds like waterfall. We don't do that anymore. We are being Agile. We just code. No, wait, that's not what's standing there. Okay, there are a couple of people who know the Agile Manifesto. There's more to that. Who of you knows the 12 principles behind that? Because there's a second page on that website. I picked only 2 of these 12 principles, but these are like, if you want to do that, these are ways how you can achieve that. And these 2 are really important because they handle this problem. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. Okay, who of you has that in his project? A couple, but yeah. The rest, nearly everyone was doing Agile, but only a couple of you are doing that. There might be a problem, because this is really more or less the idea of Agile solving this problem, that you have missing information. If you don't work together daily, yeah, you will have missing information. Also, the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. Okay, so we may have daily discussions and daily interaction with our business people, but sometimes via mail, via phone, using Slack, whatever. So there's information missing again, because you just ask something they don't see what you're doing, so they can react to what you don't tell them, and they don't show you what they are really doing, so you don't see what you are missing, what they don't tell you. So these 2 things are really, for me, key principles if you want to work Agile and want to solve this problem with we are lacking information and we don't understand the requirements. But obviously there are a lot of reasons behind that. If you work in an internet agency, or the customer really wants to get rid, they don't want to care about all this development stuff. They want to give it to someone, maybe an internal department or maybe even an external customer, and say, please do this for us, and I want to focus on my stuff really. So there are valid reasons why this doesn't happen all the time. And we cannot really change a lot of these. So what do we do, or what can we do? There are a couple of things that we can do to at least improve the situation. Perfect world, we would say we need to do this, otherwise it's not working. But yeah, if you have an external customer, you tell them, yeah, please, we need to have you daily in our office. Probably he will say no. So who of you has heard of Invest? Who of you is using user stories? As a definition of ready? Invest is a very important, or a very interesting thing, an easy thing to remember if you want to have good user stories, because there are a couple of points you can focus on to make sure that your user story has all information, at least in theory, that's necessary. They should be independent to other user stories, because otherwise it's not one user story. Negotiable, that means if you have feedback to that, you should be open to a discussion if that needs to be changed. It's not a contract that the customer told you need to do it that way. Valuable is for me the most important part. Coming back to, I need to understand what the customer tries to achieve. If I know what the value in the user story is, I can prioritize the story. I know how important it is for the customer, and I can try to understand what he's trying to achieve. Estimatable, yeah, at least to a certain degree, I need to understand how big is the story, what's going to happen, and how much effort will this take. Not in hours, but like in t-shirt sizes, story points, whatever you're using. It should be small enough to should fit in an iteration. I would probably say it should be even smaller than that. But if it doesn't fit into an iteration, you probably have an epic and not a user story or a feature. And it should be testable. That doesn't mean unit testing, but there need to be acceptance criteria where you can later on see, okay, now this is finished. Also, this comes back to valuable. If I know what is going to the customer tries to achieve with the user story, I can better have acceptance criteria to see if this is fulfilled. So for me, the most important part in this whole list, which in itself is very useful, is the valuable thing. Because I really want to know, why is he doing that? Who of you has had to do tickets where you say, okay, I don't see this as any relevant to the company, to the customer at all, but yeah, there's some politics behind that. They told me to do that, but yeah, I'm just doing that. It's really thing. I even had a project at in a former company where me and the project lead both agreed that it's totally stupid to do that, because we have a working software which is not quite nice, but it's working. But there was some internal politics that someone pushed it, and he wanted to have a rewrite, a new shiny application for that. There was no business value, in my opinion, in there. At least no really important thing, but yeah. So if there would be a rule that there need to be discussed what the business value of something is, this would have probably not be implemented. Another thing, come back to event storming. Who of you at least heard about DDD or really finds it interesting to do something with DDD? I think it's more than a buzzword meanwhile. Event storming, who has not heard of event storming? Maybe I should ask that first. Okay, event storming. There was this workshop from Anna in the beginning, or in the beginning of the week. It's a way to get the domain specialist, like your business people and the developers in the room, and trying to figure out what is your business process. If you want to create a new software, something, okay, what will be the process? Really, not as a developer, but really with this business people, domain experts, with sticky notes on a timeline frame, handling events. Okay, what is going to happen? What triggers these events? Really trying to figure out what is your business process. And very interesting, because a lot of times even the business people itself won't agree in the beginning on how their process works. And afterward they figure out, oh, this is how this works. I didn't know that. And maybe they are working there for a couple of years. I think Arne and PHPCC itself can tell you more stories about that. They have some stories where even the CEO didn't really know how their process was working. He was thinking it was working like that. And the business people itself were thinking it worked like this. But they both were wrong. It was working completely different. So this is really helpful to just figure out what is going on and what you want to achieve. For existing business processes, but also for a new one. Because you more or less visualize the ideas the stakeholder has, and helps you as a developer as well to understand what is going on there. What are really the important parts? And coming back to DED, it makes it easy to find these domain boundaries. Like, okay, this is handling, for example, the checkout. And, oh, okay, now the order starts. Like, okay, this handles shipping and everything. This was just handling the basket. So there are different domains that are completely different from how I need to handle them on software side as well if I want to do DDD. And also, what are the domain language, where's the domain language the customer use, so I understand what they are thinking and how they handle this. If I have the same glossary, use the same wording, then the business people it makes it much, much easier to communicate with them. If you're using different language on our side, in our application, in the software, it's much, much harder if you run into problems to communicate what your problem is. Because you may be using the same word with a completely different meaning. Any of you who has had the situation you're talking to someone about something and later on you figure out you use both the same word but we're talking about completely different things? Yeah, it happens. So now imagine you're writing an application and this happens. So you are thinking you know what he means, but you're doing something completely different. This is not that good. There's another method, because I'm quite fast it seems, where I can talk a lot about, so I will take some time for that. It's a workshop I'm doing for a couple of years now, and I really enjoy it because it's a lot of fun. It's like we're doing a developer workshop about architecture for 1 or 2 days without laptop, computer, anything, just at a whiteboard. And in the beginning, when I started with this, it was, yeah, okay, we're doing architecture, and also a lot of teams think it's about architecture, but you start to figure out it's a lot about requirements. The idea behind architecture cutters is you get a very small set of requirements in a written form, maybe just a small paragraph, and then you get 1.5, 2 hours, whatever you need for that, to create an architecture vision. Sounds easy enough. So we start and it's like, okay, how do I get from a paragraph of text with probably missing information to something I would call an architecture vision? How would you do that? You were looking like you did architecture cutters before, so.
Oh yes, we sit and then talk and discuss the requirements first, and then we just throw stuff at the whiteboard and delete when needed and move it and so on, like iteratively.
Yeah, there's a nice thing in there is that you throw stuff on a whiteboard and then delete it or wipe it away. When I do this workshop at customers and they tell me, oh no, we don't have whiteboard, but we have Flipchart. It's the same, right? Well, the problem with the Flipchart is I write a lot of text and then figure out something is wrong because I figured out, oh, the requirements were different, or this isn't working. What do? If I have a Flipchart full of text, I would probably strike something, do some errors, or no, this was meaning here. If I do this a couple of times, you remember the car in the beginning? It looked like that. It's like, yeah, it's probably correct, but nobody understands it anymore, and you want to do it again. So for me, a Flipchart, or planning on a Flipchart, is the same as writing code. You will not throw it away because you put effort in there. If you've developed code for 2 months and you figure out, oh, this is wrong, you will not throw it away because you put so much time and so much effort in there. If you do it on a whiteboard, you just wipe out the part that's wrong and write it again. So that's why I really like to have whiteboards. And the whole idea for architecture cutters, to tell a small story about that, there was a book in the 70s, Musical Men Month. Who have heard about that? It's a book from Frederick Brooks. Back in the days it was Frederick Brooks Jr. It's really old, it's 75. Read it. It's totally up to our current situations. And there was one chapter in there, plan to throw one away. So they, in the 70s, they already knew the first version of everything you will build is not good. So plan to throw it away. That's also the idea what was prototyping and everything. So a lot of stuff in there is still completely feasible for our times. In 2010, he wrote another book, Design of Design in English. And it was interesting because he was not only talking about software design, but also about building a house and the architecture involved with building a house. And he figured out that if you talk about design and architecture in these different scenarios, you still talk about the same things. And then he was asking, okay, how do we get great designers? Think about stuff like Apple, for example. You can say a lot of bad things about Apple, but the design, especially for the first iPhone and everything, was really nice. But how do you get people to be great designers? Said great designers design, of course. So they have a lot of experience, they do this all the time, and they have a lot learning in there. They did a lot of mistakes before, so they know what's correct. And in 2012, Ted Nowak, on some conference in US, was asking, okay, applying this to software architecture, how do we get great architects if most of them do it a couple of times, like half dozen times in their lifetime? If you do a big application, the architecture planning takes some time, then the project itself probably takes some years to get finished. So how often do you do that really for big application? Not that often. And maybe your position has changed in the meanwhile, so you're not even doing architecture stuff anymore. So once you have some experience, you're not doing it anymore. So he came up with the idea of architecture cutters. So if we don't do this in our real job enough to get experience with this, means every time we need to do it, we probably don't have the experience that we really need to be able to do it good. So we need to train that. Code cutters are probably well known. Who doesn't know code cutter? Who doesn't know code cutter? Code cutter is like you take a very small example of code, an idea, and write it down and try to solve it in different ways. The most famous one is FIS-BUS. Like you count from 0 to 100, and every number that you can divide by 3, you print out FIS. Every number you divide it by 5 or divisible by 5, you print out bus. And for something like 15, where 3 and 5 is possible, you print out FIS-BUS. There's a website with over 100 solutions to that problem. You can learn new IDEs, new languages, new programming styles. I always use them for like TDD, pair programming, because they are really small, simple ideas where you can train stuff with. And the same idea here, a little bigger. We try to train and get a gut feeling. How do we do this? How much planning do we need? When do we start? What questions do we need to ask? To get a feeling, how can we evolve from something that's missing information, that's not 100% correct? How much do we need, and where are the problems? Very often, if you're doing architecture stuff and you're planning something, as a developer, you have to take decisions or even make assumptions of something. I'm asking again, okay, who of you has been in a situation where he's writing code and maybe later on, or even at that point, figured out we can do it this way or that way, but this will have a big business impact because it will change how the customer reacts. The most important part of this, because it's very hard to figure that out at that point, you always have architectural decisions ahead of you, like I can invest more time to make it more flexible, or can take a shortcut, and this will probably not as flexible. If you talk to a customer and tell him this and make, okay, do you have any plans to go further this direction? Because do you think about, maybe not now, but are there any plans in your drawers or something that you will do this in the next year? Do we need the flexibility later on? Or do you say, no, we will never need that, we talked about that, it's not going to happen. Can we skip this? This is exactly what can happen if you don't talk about that. Like 2 months later, he comes around and says, we need this feature, and you took the shortcut. And now you need to refactor your whole application because you didn't talk about your business decision that you did in your architecture. So you need to develop this gut feeling, now I'm making a decision, I'm taking an assumption what's the right way to do this. And if you have this daily interaction or more interaction with the customer, you can ask them, I have these 2 opportunities and this means this or this means that. You have to present them as options, not only saying, should I do strategy pattern to make it more flexible, or should I do just the quick and easy way and code everything hard? He will not understand that. But if you tell him, we have 2 options, we have option A, this takes a little bit more time, but keeps, for example, the language in our shop flexible. Do you have any plans to move your shop to another country, to another language? Yes. Then we can. You can say, but this will need more time. Or we have the different way, we can do this quicker, we will ignore this completely, but if you ever want to do this, we need to invest more time. So he knows, yeah, he will say yes, but you tell him, okay, this costs more money for you. So you need to give him the consequences and the business values behind these 2 opportunities so he can make a business decision. If you tell him, yeah, I can do it the flexible way or the quick way, he will always, right, but this is not the business value behind that. You have to tell him, okay, this costs more time and a little bit of money, but will enable you to do that later. Are there any plans for that? This will be faster. We can go online earlier, but if you change your opinion, we need to discuss that and we probably have a problem. The benefit is, if he ever changes his mind, you can say, we talked about that, so okay, now we need more time for that. So you have arguments to even say, okay, we need a refactoring now. So it's really, really hard, and that's what architecture does help you trading to develop this gut feeling. How much information do I need? When do I need to start? It's fun when I do this training for the first time with teams, and if we only focus on one day, like we're doing 3 runs, 3 cutoffs per day, and the first one I can say, okay, here's the example, I pick a very easy one, which I know very good, and I know all the questions they should come up with. And I had a company where I was doing this training with, and there were like 3 or 4 teams with 3 or 4 people each. And I'm the perfect customer in that regard. I'm running around, I'm asking them, do you have any question? Because I, as a moderator or facilitator, I'm playing the stakeholder, I'm playing the other department, I'm playing everyone you need to ask. So I'm really perfect. I'm always there, I'm asking you, do you have any questions? Stuff like never happens in real life. And they were saying no. Oh, no, we know what to do. I could actually go downstairs and play kicker or fußball because there was nothing for me to do for 1.5 hours. Because they're telling me, no, we don't need you. Go away. I know that was a big problem. Once they presented the solutions, I was asking, okay, did you think about this? Did you verify that this is correct, what you did there? Did you ask the customer if he really wants that, what you're building there? You're making business decisions on that case. And then, no, why? Oh, we should have asked? Oh, okay, yeah. The second iteration, they were asking me all the time. I was sitting with one team, and the other 2 teams were waiting in the door for me to get finish these questions. They were not really. They were only they were asking any question, everything that came up, every small detail. They were kind of afraid to do something, assume something they didn't verify. So they never really got to the point where they could create an architecture. They were still busy with figuring out. Are there any? They were like really asking me, are there any more questions we should ask? So I don't know what you're doing, what you're trying to do. I don't know. So learning from that was, okay, you need to find the way where you need to stop, where you think you have enough information to get started. We are agile, so we know there will be changes, but we need to have the foundation, the real important things figured out before we start. But we don't need to figure out every detail. Then we would be back at waterfall, and that doesn't work. So in the third iteration, we typically start, okay, take a defined time box like 15 to 20 minutes, figure out what you need to do, ask these questions later on, and then take at least 1 hour to really get into architecture. And if you have figured out the first few flaws in the requirements or first few things you are missing, you probably have a solid base already where you can start on. And everything that comes later is hopefully just a small detail you didn't miss. You might still miss a big thing, but yeah. As I said before, I think Fred Brooks had this plan to throw away chapter in this first book. I always tell the teams I want them to throw away the first 3 or 4 versions, but on a whiteboard. Because everything you build after that will be much better than the first version you would have been built. So, getting to some recommendation, what can you do? If you're going to plan something, you need to understand, or if you're going to develop something, you need to understand the problem. The problem with that is really, you need to get a gut feeling and need to train your gut feeling. So, do I understand the problem? Do I have all information I need? So, try to develop this gut feeling. How much information do I need? Do I have a feeling I know enough, or is there still something for you or for your team, for someone else in your team that says, I don't know if I really get this? If someone is there, take another round, sit together, discuss it again, and try to figure out there might be something missing, and it might be the really important part. So try to understand the problem first. After that, you can think about a solution. Okay, we have the problem now. How can we solve this? What can we do to really solve this problem? And this might be something that is not really software development. Maybe we can tell the customer, wait, if you do this or change this, you don't need a new project. You don't need a new application. Maybe we can do a quick fix or something really easy for your old application. Or maybe you can just change your process internally if you understand the process well. Maybe it's much easier to change something in there, some communication between departments, and that will solve all your problems. The software should always be the last resort for a bigger, because it takes a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of things can go wrong. But that's where we come in. If you figure out, okay, we want to automate something, we want to find a solution, then think about how you can implement this. This is where the architecture and everything comes in play. Now we have the solution, we have this business process figured out. also the nice thing about like doing it on a whiteboard is after you have a solution on a whiteboard, or at least a draft on the whiteboard, you can throw this against the requirements and against the process and figure out, okay, does this solution really fulfill this process? You can run it through all the use cases, user stories, and see, okay, can we solve this problem with this? If it looks good, yeah, okay, maybe we can start. And then you have really at least a good foundation for application. Some other things to keep in mind. Coding is really not necessarily the most important or productive thing of your time. Meetings can be boring, meetings can be a time waste, but really sitting together and trying to understand everything is much more productive than, oh, we don't have time, let's start coding. Every time you start something new, a feature, whatever, ask yourself if you really understand what you're going to do here. Good and frequent communication is important, not only between stakeholders and your team, but also within the team. If you don't talk to your colleagues, maybe you're developing both in different direction. Another example from this architecture kata thing, there was one kata where I told them, okay, you have a shop system, a shopping cart, and there's an API to, you need to develop an API to a different department that's responsible for shipping. The question I was expecting was, okay, what kind of format does the department need? What should we do? Like in real life, you would discuss with the other department, okay, what would the API look like? What do you need JSON? Do you need XML? Whatever. And they were just everything like this, but they were not asking. They were just doing it. And asked them later, okay, did you talk to the other department how the API is specified? No, we just did XML. Why? Yeah, maybe they can't handle, don't want to handle that. Maybe they have other APIs themselves already. So communication is important to other departments, to everyone involved, to the stakeholder. Try to get a quick feedback loop. The earlier you get the customer involved into your ideas, into your solutions, the earlier you get feedback that he figures out he needs something different. Because this might happen, this will happen. So if you build for 2 months and then show it to the customer, and then he figures out, no, we need something else, yeah, not that good. And plan to throw some away on a whiteboard, if possible. Or maybe you can do a prototype to just think about your ideas, to verify your own ideas. Maybe you need to do a spike to verify if the solution is even working technically. But you need to plan to throw some away, because if you start implementing everything for real at the first iteration, it probably will not be that good. And yeah, this is a lot of talking about planning, and again, this is not waterfall. Thinking back about this, the key values. Yes, all these interactions and working software is very good, but there's still value in planning. But you need to develop this gut feeling and train yourself, how much planning do I need? You don't want to plan everything and have like this waterfall-y architecture where you say, okay, we're completely just implementing this solution now, and there will be no change for that. There will be change, there will be smaller change, there will be bigger change. It's unavoidable, but at least try to get as much information as you can before, so you can plan as much as you need. Not more, not less. That's the hard part. And that's where I can really recommend stuff like architecture katas to train these things, because you don't do it often enough in real life. And then you probably can turn around the sentence and you have hours of planning will save you weeks of coding. So that's the way we want it. And I think I'm good on time, so thank you. Any questions? I think we have like 5 minutes left, so any questions? If not, then thank you. Feedback?
Are you using UML for planning your software?
The question was if I'm using UML for planning my software. I don't really care what you use. The architecture kata shows you that there's really a lot of value in some kind of diagrams. I don't really tell the people use UML anymore. You can use it. There was a blog post on, I forgot the name. He was ranting about UML because how many UML diagrams do most of you know and use? 7 or 9. How? Yeah, three or four. And he was renting like UML as at least 15 or 16 UML diagrams, but you only need like user stories, use case diagrams, maybe components diagrams, something like activity diagram or something, and class diagrams. So that's basically most of the things you need. Entity relationship maybe, and he was, yeah, sequence or activity is like interchangeable. He was ranting about that there's so many stuff in there and so much notation details you need to know. And he was ranting about that, and a couple of years later he came up with c4model.org. It's like, the idea is like Google Maps. You have this bigger picture if you're zoomed out, and the more you zoom in, the more detail you get. Even you have different information on the different layers. Like on the lowest level you have Google Street View, on the highest level you maybe see only the continents or maybe the country lines or something, and if you go deep you see the streets and everything else. So you have different layers for different information, and his idea was C4 was like we are zooming from the outside in. He changed a little bit now, I have to look it up, but in the beginning it was like the highest picture is context, like the system. What are our main systems involved here? Then if you zoom down into one system or one context, you get what components are in there. Or no, he was going, what containers are in there? I would call it services. What service is this thing using? And then what components are within the service or container? And at the lowest level, what classes are in the component?
Can you repeat the domain?
c4model.org. Or .com? Or .com, yeah, sorry. It's really interesting because it's a really dumbed down UML. Event storming is a way to also figure out, at least in the beginning, what your process is, and you can kind of abstract user stories from these and go into architecture planning. I know PHPCC also said, okay, they don't need all the other stuff, they just use event storming because they are probably recommend CQRS anyway. I want to have it completely separated from the architecture solution, so I don't care what the architecture solution will be. I want to have something that will show me the business process, and in the next step, I want to see what is the technical solution or architecture solution to solve this problem. So I would start maybe with event storming, use this as a base to understand the process, and then use something like C4 or something to try to dump down, like starting at the top and going down into more details. Because in planning, one problem the developers a lot of times have is like what I said with the focus. They are talking about implementation detail or specific cases when you're just talking about what service do you need. I have this a lot of times they were talking about what service do you need. Yeah, but you need to remember that we need this special case in that occasion. Yeah, okay, but that's implementation detail. That will be part of the service, but I don't care because it doesn't influence what service I need. I don't want to care. If this influences my services, what this means, I have a completely different separation of concerns. I have a problem there. So I like the C4 model because it really lets you start at the top and then go deeper and deeper, and you can really say, okay, now it's enough information I have, and I can start with that. Because most of the times you don't need a class diagram.
Let's say the CEO of your company is selling a new product to the client and you are working at the internet agency. Yeah. Would you say that developers should assist the CEO in planning a new software for the client and to assist in estimating the cost of it and such stuff, or should the developers only assist in planning the sprints?
The question is if like the CEO of your agency is planning a new software or something, should you as a developer or should a developer support him in planning, estimating? I would say to a certain degree, yes, of course, because planning as a developer, we can say, okay, there are some certain restrictions technical-wise we need to at least tell them. If he's planning or calculating the cost, I know we are developers. We all know that we have a big problem with estimating stuff, and there is a big problem with estimating stuff in general. Yes, but I was involved in this situation a couple of times in my career. If you have a senior developers who can at least try to put on these business glasses as well and see it from a business standpoint, there's a lot of value in there. But you need to make sure that the developer's not focusing on implementation details already, but he needs to really see, okay, are there anything technical-wise what we need to really care of? There are a lot of other good talks that show you that estimation doesn't work and how it doesn't work and why it doesn't work, so I will not go into that. But I think if you have a good CEO, he understands that as well, and you as a technical specialist or whatever can support him in these things. So there's value in there. I would say yes. I will not say that it will always work and that it will always be perfect, but in general I would say yes. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. As I said before, feedback on Twitter if you want, and I like feedback if you liked it. Even if you didn't like it, tell me so I can improve. Thank you.